You were under a different statute. That was the independent counsel statute.
Right.
You had an obligation to testify and an obligation to release all of this information, did you not?
I did. The statute was absolutely clear. We were to report to the House of Representatives when we found substantial credible information that an impeachable offense may have been committed. And did we find lots of evidence?
Right. And you had how many specific felonies? My memory, if it serves me right, it was 11.
We had 11 counts in our impeachment report to Congress, and it began, Sean, with perjury in the Paula Corbin Jones case, but it went on. This is what was really serious, the obstruction of justice. You know, obstruction of justice is being thrown around, but as you know, a judge found President Clinton in contempt, not for his perjury, which he committed, but for obstruction of justice.
You know, it's interesting. We hear a lot, Gregg Jarrett, about obstruction of justice. As Robert Mueller himself was clear, and he needed a little time to, let's say, correct the record from what he had previously said after his 9.5-minute debacle last week. Right. And he got the help of the Attorney General, frankly, who I think threw him a lifeline. But putting that aside for a minute, how many more times do they get to investigate the president over one issue? How many more people that work in that White House will have to pay, $800 or $1,000 an hour to be asked the same question over and over again? This is now the 5th investigation into the same topic. Am I wrong on that?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And it will continue until the day of the next election. If the president wins re-election, it'll continue for another 4 years. This will go on ad nauseum. And in large part because Mueller decided he wasn't going to do his job on the issue of obstruction. There's nothing about the OLC opinion that would have prevented him from rendering, as Judge Starr did, an opinion that an offense has been committed. The OLC opinion only talks about prosecution and charging, but Mueller wouldn't do it. And also, he managed to write around, to circumvent two U.S. Supreme Court decisions that say general statutes don't apply to a president exercising their constitutional authority, and obstruction's a general statute, unless the statute says so. Look at the obstruction statutes. They don't say so. And Mueller knew that, but he couldn't bring himself to say that the law does not support obstruction of justice, so he tried to write this roadmap for impeachment, hoping that Democrats and the media would take up the mantle, and of course they have.
Let me ask you both. I'll start with you, Ken Starr. This letter by Stephen Boyd to Jerry Nadler, responding to his request for information related to a review underway by the Department of Justice into certain activities involving the campaigns, and it goes on to say the review is broad in scope, it is multifaceted, it is intended to illuminate open questions regarding the activities of U.S. and foreign intelligence services, as well as non-governmental organizations and individuals. I take this letter to be a wide open notice to everybody that all abuse of power, any corruption that has taken place in the course of these events is going to be discovered, and every rock is going to be looked under, and they're going to get to the truth, whether or not people abuse power. How do you interpret it?
It's a very good news, confirmation that we will get the truth. And here is a key dimension of that, Sean. This investigation is being conducted by professionals, by John Durham, the United States Attorney, by others in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and by the Department of Justice professionals. So there's not some outsider, Bob Mueller being brought in, you're now special counsel. What Bill Barr has wisely done is says we're using the resources of the Justice Department, and he's also making it very clear that he's getting cooperation from the intelligence agencies, by the way, including, it appears, foreign intelligence agencies. So I think we should be very optimistic that at long last we're going to know the truth.
And we saw what happened with a couple of Italian intel people, Gregg Jarrett. How do you interpret this letter?
Well, what struck me was it said non-governmental. And so that means people like Glenn Simpson, Fusion GPS, Nellie at that same company. It also means the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign, who were involved in paying for the phony dossier that was used as a pretext to launch the investigation, as well as lying to the FISA court to spy on a Trump campaign associate. And so this is very broad. It's far-encompassing, and it looks like John Durham and his team of investigators will be looking at all matters of potential corruption seriously.
Thank you both, Ken Starr, Gregg Jarrett. Now, tonight we have even more big breaking developments surrounding the